It used to be subtle anti-Zionism. Now it's out of the closet, bold-faced Jew hatred.
We're gonna get them all together, we're gonna put them on a ship, and we're gonna send them back to the fucking Middle East.
He wants us out. He wants the Jewish people out of America.
If you are a Jewish person in America, sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. This is not really my home.
I feel like to the untrained ear or the untrained eye that sees this, they're like, does he really hate us or not?
All right, folks, Yishai Fleisher here, and I'm joined by one of my heroes, Ari Abramowitz, who is the co-founder of the Land of Israel Network and the co-founder of the Aru Goat Farm. We have a beautiful background right now, but we're actually on a hilltop in Judea, and we are so happy and amazed that we are part of this process of the return of the Jewish people to the Land of Israel. And as you can hear from my accent, you'll hear from Ari, we're formerly American Jews. We were raised in America. We're proud to have been raised in America. Ari Abramowitz has been telling me all his life, at some point, anti-Semitism is going to come to America and is going to change the way that country relates to its Jewish people, and Jewish people should be ready for that. It looks like maybe that moment has arrived. As Ari told me, we'll talk about it, the face of Lavan has changed. Like we say in the Bible, that Jacob saw the face of Laban as it has changed. Has it changed really, or are we exaggerating? We're going to take the case. We're going to do a deep dive into one Nick Fuentes. This guy is smart. This guy is also a neo-Nazi by his own admission, and he hates the Jews, fears the Jews, respects the Jews. What does he think about Israel? What does he think about the future of the Jewish people? And how do his thoughts influence policy and the reality of Jewish people in the land of the United States? Maybe it'll send them to the land of Israel. Ari Abramowitz, you've really researched this thing deeply. Something you care a lot about. It's because of you that we're filming this today.
When I look at what's happening in America, it's so clear that the winds of history are shifting and changing. The fundamental posture and attitude of not only Americans, by all statistics, by all polls, all demographics, it is shifting against Israel in a very fundamental way, but also the Overton window has shifted, it has been blown open. Sometimes something happens that's so radical and so sudden that you don't even sense it's happening. I talk to Jews in America, we feel it, others feel it more, others feel it less, but it used to be subtle anti-Zionism. Now it's out of the closet, bold-faced Jew hatred. It used to be, the tropes of the blood libels. Now they're actually reviving the actual blood libels and saying Jews were drinking the blood of Christian children. So what is happening? Why is this happening? And I don't want this to be the conventional stand with us or American. We're not establishment Jews. We're Jews here in Judea who see the world through a prism of Torah, of biblical history, of prophetic history. I want to delve a little bit deeper, not from a place of being reactive. And I want to have sober, dispassionate clarity on what's happening so we can see that maybe there's a deeper message being broadcast to us from above through those who certainly appear to hate us. But their hatred is so intense that sometimes it actually seems like love, It's confusing. We were just watching some of these. We're like, does this guy hate us or love us? What's really happening here? Because things are shifting. I actually want to start with this clip. Here it is, Nick Fuentes, he would identify as a white supremacist, as a hater of Israel for sure. And here he is talking to Candace Owens, a black woman, and they're talking, she's saying, you should be married. She's trying to attack him. He's coming in response, but that's not what I want to talk about. There's one sentence he says that I think exposes something that American Jews, diaspora Jews need to hear. Listen to this.
If I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxxed, people are showing up to my house trying to kill me, things like that. I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, so I know you're married, I know you're older than me, but you don't know me, you don't know my life, you don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman, honestly. I don't think women, this is something in the right wing, we say we're anti-feminist, and then women go around telling men what to do, who are not their husbands. And, I don't really buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the very beginning. From the time I turned 18, people were coming for my neck and trying to get me, and I was kicked out of college. And then, once you're branded as an anti-Semite, before it became cool or popular, can't get a job, can't make a living, get banned from PayPal, all this kind of stuff. That's a very difficult.
You hear that, Yishai? He said before it became cool,
Right.
before it became popular,
Right.
it is now cool. It is popular to come out against the Jews. The masks are off. So let's delve a little bit deeper on what's really happening here. Why is it happening?
Are you sure that he's anti-Israel? Or I have noticed that in the past, countries that were anti-Semitic, let's say like Hungary, had a lot of anti-Semitism. Turns out today that they're our allies because they were more xenophobic than anti-Semitic. They just didn't want foreigners in their land. But once we are a separate nation state, they have no problem working with us, cooperating with us, and actually cooperating on anti-jihadism. So are you sure that Nick Fuentes hates Israel per se?
So before I did my deep dive, that would have been a fair question because, I was interviewed on Louis Theroux. I'm the thumbnail for his documentary called The Settlers, right? He wants to make Israel look as bad as possible. Start, middle, and end, Ari Abramowitz. And I actually, for the first time, it's interesting how he cut and sliced and diced me to make me look super extreme, but I actually thought it made Israel look pretty good.
And that was one of your tactics, right? One of your tactics was to go so extreme was that he wasn't going to be able to cut anything out.
Right, but what I said was, I don't mind if he makes me look like a wild-eyed extremist, as long as it's the wild-eyed extremist that I actually am.
Right.
Don't lie, don't distort.
Right.
And so I was starting to really admire Nick Fuentes on that front. He's saying what he sees as truth. Candace Owens came again and said, Israel killed Charlie Kirk. And he came out and said, Israel killed Charlie Kirk. If Ben Shapiro was killed, you would say Israel killed Ben Shapiro. They didn't kill Charlie Kirk. There's real reasons to hate the Jews, he says.
Right.
Don't make up stuff, right? But then I hear him say, no, Israel's committing genocide. Look at this. Watch this clip.
Food, no medical supplies. And this is in the middle of a brutal, one-sided, asymmetrical, you can't even call it a war. Because a war would imply that there's shooting on both sides or that there's some level of parity. Or even that the conflict is originating from both sides, but it isn't. The Palestinians have even lost their ability to counterattack. Hamas, nearly every one of its garrisons has been destroyed. So this is now just a one-sided, it's like shooting fish in the barrel, pardon the expression, but this is just a straight-up genocide. These people are starving. They're literally dying.
So he's saying that Israel's committing genocide. That is unquestionably a modern blood libel.
Yeah,
right?
it's a lie, and it's disingenuous, and it really, I don't want to say I'm disappointed in Nick Fuentes, but it disappointed me in him, right? Because up until then, the things he was saying, I'm like, wow, this is really quite an insight into something that is transcendently true about the Jews, right? Let's not get into the whole debunking the genocide claim. Anyone with eyes in their head would know that we're not committing genocide.
Right.
I just heard Yechiel Leiter, the ambassador, said, if Israel is committing genocide, my son wouldn't be dead. If we wanted to commit genocide, the war would have been over in 15 minutes. Their population would not have been going up. But let's not go into that.
We're just not committing genocide. That whole thing is just a lie. We have a war. There is an anti-Israel organization, a terrorist organization called Hamas. There's a lot of Gazans who support it. They're in a war with us. We're in a war with Gaza.
Right, but then again, let's look for a second through a biblical prism about that very thing. Mm-hmm. Right, what did Korach say about Moses? Lama ata mitnaseh? Why, Moses, do you exalt yourself in such an arrogant way over the people? When we just heard God himself say that Moshe Rabbeinu is anav mikol adam. He is more humble than any man ever to have been. Israel is always accused of being exactly the thing that we're opposite. They always accuse us of being the opposite of our greatest strength.
Well, my mom always says that anti-Semites accuse us of what they want to do. Okay, so they really want to commit genocide against the Jews, so they say, the Jews are committing genocide. They reverse it a lot of times. But okay, the point is that that's a very common refrain. The Jews are committing genocide against the Arabs. But if you listen to Fuentes, most of the time he's not saying that Israel is illegitimate, or that Israel should be divided into a Palestine and an Israel. He's saying, you're affecting this country, America, and I want you guys out. I want this to be a white country, and you guys are too important, too powerful, too successful. You're navigating the ship in a way that it shouldn't be navigated.
No, but there's another element of disingenuity when it comes to this. And what is that? He comes against, he's like, Muslims, Jews, get out of America, get out. Let's actually play this clip. I want you to hear it.
Let's hear it.
To the chat if you agree. We're going to take all these Shapiros, the Weinsteins, the Epsteins, and we're going to take the Zorans, the Hassans, and the Ilhans. We're going to get them all together. We're going to put them on a ship, and we're going to send them back to the Middle East. Send them back to the desert. You can have them. Let's get all the towel heads on one side, tiny hats on the other. We're going to put them on a big luxury cruise ship or a giant Boeing 737 MAX, and we can send them all right back to the Middle East. All day long, they'll be going to Iraq, they'll be going to Israel, they'll be going to Turkey. They can all go back. You know who should be running New York? The Irish, the Italians, the English, the Germans, the Dutch, not Jews, not Muslims, not Chinese people, not Hispanics. It should be whites. I want New York to be white. I want LA.
We just watched a clip where Nick Fuentes says, get the blank out of here. He wants us out. He wants the Jewish people out of America. Now, people like you and I, we actually believe that the Jewish people are being called home to the homeland. We believe that the greatest project of the Jewish people in 2,000 years is the ingathering of the exiles. We've been working for years to help Jewish people consider leaving America and to come to the land of Israel. So isn't Nick Fuentes, in a sense, an unpleasant, but in some ways a welcome change? Isn't he a guy who is out there saying, you don't belong here anymore? You don't belong here anymore. He says, he says, that was fun. It was fun to be with you, but we're done. You got to go to your homeland. Is he basically a voice of God? Is he a messenger that's saying to people, okay, you know, the American Jewish Project is over. It had its peak. It was great. And at its peak, it did many great things for the world. It created world stability. It helped the economy of the world through America. It also helped buttress the Jewish state for a while. But now Israel doesn't need it. It doesn't need American help anymore. And the American Jewish Project is now at its, you know, it's already on the other side of the peak. It's already in its downward spiral. And he says he's helping it out. He's saying, like, get out.
Yeah, that's why I find myself struggling when I look at Candace Owens and I look at Nick
But Candace
Fuentes.
Owens she's a vile anti-Semite in the plainer sense.
Right. Okay. No, first of all, he is too. He's just had 10 years to craft his art and moderate himself to sound moderate so it can happen in phases. The guy's he's much smarter than Candace Owens in his approach to this. She's just coming from this visceral, raw hatred. But even so, I find myself struggling to be angry at her or to hate her because I remember her when she was so regal and eloquent and standing for truth to power, being in Congress, talking against the Democratic Party and how they're using blacks in America. And now I see her and it's clear that she's got this spirit of hatred against Israel and the Jewish people that is overwhelming her. And I can't help but to have a little bit of respect for people like Fuentes and Carlson and Candace Owens, that they're almost like Amalek. When Israel left Egypt, right? And the whole world was like, oh, the God of Israel just parted the sea and everyone was afraid. Amalek was the first one to attack them, cooled off this fire of fear and reverence that the world had for him.
But
they were
that's
the
the
ones
difference.
to jump in. But let me just finish here. They were the first ones to jump in and really attack Israel and the Jews, saying, Hineni, here I am, God. I am answering the call that you're clearly sending in my heart. I'm being true to the message you're putting in my heart, they're saying, which when you look at the prophet Jeremiah, chapter 16, verse 16, he says, first I will send fishers to my people, right? What is fishers? People with bait. You were a fisher for me, Yishai. You really brought into my head the excitement and the passion and the mission and the purpose, the joy of living in Israel. And you were broadcasting that to the world. Fishers saying, come home, nation of Israel, to the land of Israel. We've been praying for it. It's so exciting. And those that were listening to that message, that wanted that bait, that wanted to come, they came. Now, God says in the second part of that verse, I'm going to send the hunters. I'm going to send the hunters to bring my people home. They're rising to the occasion and they're fulfilling that role. What do we think? For thousands of years, the most prophesied prophecy throughout the entire Tanakh is the ingathering of the exiles. But it's going to stop at Brooklyn? It's going to stop in Miami or LA?
Right.
Of course not. It's happening now. And so what's happening is the light of redemption is starting to shine. The nations are feeling it. They're feeling the threat of that light to their control over things. And so they are going with zeal to fight against it, with rage and hatred.
Okay. But if I had to have anybody in the studio right now here with us, I wouldn't want Tucker because I feel like he's a big liar. And I feel like he just poo-poos everything. And I wouldn't want Candace because I think she's just nutty. This guy Fuentes, he has something that I like. What is that? He has a respect, an awe, a fear of the Jewish people. You get a sense that he's like, these people are truly powerful, truly unique. He keeps talking about the fact that they have a togetherness around the planet. He talks about the fact that they have each other's back. He talks about that they have this country, Israel, that's going to become very powerful. He sees that we're going to be able to, have a temple in Jerusalem. He fears it, but he acknowledges it. He's not just talking about, like Candace Owens is just trying to say, all the Jewish people are just a bunch of philanderers. All they do is do pedophilia. Like she reduces it to some kind of, lie, obviously, but also a very base anti-Semitism. He's saying these people are surviving through time. They're going to build that third temple. They're using our America, and I don't like that, but there's a power to them that he respects. And I like that. Right. I prefer his posture, which I think is much truer than the posture of just like a low grade type of hate.
Right. So that's why this is actually happening. This show we're doing right now is happening because I reached out to you, Yishai, because I found myself, something was stirring in my soul saying, I want to have not a debate, but a discussion with this guy, Nick Fuentes. I'm fascinated to hear how his ideas will clash or mesh or whatever with the words and the thoughts of a Jew in Judea. Right. Not a Ben Shapiro and not a Mark Levine. He has a vicious hatred for them. Listen to what he says about them. Listen to this.
Any of us, do you think any of us, any of you watching, me, Tucker, Candace, Dave Smith, do you think any one of us woke up one day in America in the 21st century and we, out of a clear blue sky, became really interested in age-old anti-Semitic tropes? We woke up one day and started believing 19th century ancient tropes about Jewish people, these like anachronistic anti-Semitic blood libel? Of course not. We were pushed here. The Jews pushed us to this point. I will echo what Charlie said. You have left us with no choice. That's what happened to me. That's what happened to Tucker. That is what happened to Candace. For what? For opposing genocide? For saying America first? For wanting to close the damn borders? They are hateful. They are intolerant. They are the unreasonable ones. They are obsessed and preoccupied with Israel. The goodwill of Christians, Americans, Europeans, it has evaporated. So your museums, your victim narrative, your oy veys, you can shove them up. And we're looking at people like Josh Hammer and Mark Levin, and we're saying, listen, this is America. We're looking at Josh Hammer, this ugly goblin, and we're grabbing him by his lapel, this tiny little goblin, and saying, listen, you can go back to Israel. It's America first. We're grabbing Mark Levin and saying, you had a good run here. You had a good thing going. Get with America or get the out of our country. That's everybody. That's everybody.
Oh my gosh, Ari, that was one of the most angry clips that I've seen of Nick Fuentes. And he went against these people like Ben Shapiro, like Mark Levin, and like Josh Hammer, people who I know personally. But I want to ask you a question, Ari. And I'm gonna let's have a little fun here. When I read Hitler, and I've read a lot of Hitler, and I've read also really like the whole. I'm a student of World War II and the Holocaust, but also World War II in general. There's no question that Hitler and the Nazis were fueled by old anti-Semitism, old goblin-like anti-Semitism. The hook-nosed Jew controlling everything. That whole thing.
You hear that coming out in him, too.
Right?
He's like, oh, grab them by the belt and say, "You Jew."
Yeah,
right.
Like there's something
the strong Aryan white and the sniveling weak Jew. Right. You hear that in his messaging there.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. There is definitely a throwback, and he even says, "What do you think? It's just a throwback?" It's like, yeah, it is a throwback. But there's another side to it, which is something that I don't know if you're going to be comfortable talking about, but he's also angry at the leftiness of American Jewry. He's angry at progressiveness, which has brought in all the gay movement, the LGBT movement. The Jews have led all that stuff. And the Hollywood, which has sown a lot of immorality, a lot of stuff that Jewish people do bring. See, the real truth is, you and I, we're red. If we were states, if we were American states, we're red state guys, okay? And so many of basically in the three big ones, Bible, family, nationalism, defense, we're red, the way we look at things, okay? But to deny that the Jewish people have a strong, strong blue streak, and in America, bluer than red, and that all the progressive organizations are all run by Jews or have Jewish people, have Jewish money, to deny that Soros has a huge impact on this world and has a huge impact on the American agenda, to deny that these things exist, and that he's saying, you're taking our country in a way that is not its natural way. There is an argument to be made there. Hitler made the same argument. He was very concerned about communism. And he wasn't wrong that the Jews were the leaders of the communist movement. They took over the Soviet Union. It was many ways a Jewish thing. So, there is an element of vomiting out of this pulling America on borders and other issues to the left that he despises. And so me and you might be like, well, I kind of agree because I'm also against the Jewish left, the communist left, et cetera, et cetera. I can understand that. I wouldn't take it to the place of, put them in camps, destroy them and all that kind of stuff. But to deny that the Jewish people have had a hand in the dissemination of very bad ideas that are anti-family, anti-Bible, anti-human. Like if I'm a Christian, right? I'm not. I'm an Orthodox Jew, but if I was a Christian and I would say, well, the Jewish people, they killed our God and they're the Antichrist, they're the anti-Bible people. I could find a lot of reasons to prove that. I could be like, yeah, these people bring the opposite of the Bible. They're not the Ten Commandments people. They're not Sabbath observers. They're not family values people. They're the other side. So there's an allergic reaction to that. Do you think that that's unfair to have that? Do you want him to love all the American Jews that are there? Do you think that he has to love Hollywood and the progressives and all that kind of stuff? Or can there be a vomiting out of that?
No, I think that's exactly why we're doing the show, because if we're piercing deeper than what he's saying and we're not reactive, we can listen that there's underlying truths to what he is saying. Right. I've heard it say that the Jewish people are just like everybody else, but only more so. Only more so. Meaning that when we're left and woke, we're the high priests in the cult of left wokeism. Right. And if we're right-wing and conservative, we're the Ben Shapiros and the Mark Levines, and we're all over that voice, right? We come from both sides. But also, let's zoom in for a second on that left wokeism and understand what is the psychology, the deep subconscious psychology of these Jews that are advocating this, what is clearly immoral, destructive, poisonous ideologies in America. They believe, looking back, they have a deep subconscious cognizance that eventually, everywhere we go, we are reflexively hated and uprooted and spit out. So if they advocate the most extreme forms of tolerance, then they will definitely be clumped in to that tolerance. They will be the recipients.
So it's a survival mechanism.
It's a survival mechanism.
Which affects a whole country's way of looking at things.
That's
and
right.
He's saying, I don't want that.
And that's the irony, is that when you're afraid of something, you're not aware, but you're actually maximizing the probability that that very thing you're afraid of will manifest itself in the world. So the Jews are so afraid of that they have actually facilitated it with this woke leftism that is so repulsive to people like me and you, and also Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and most good right-thinking people.
I don't want to put Tucker because Tucker has flipped in a way that's just like, and Candace, I don't respect them. I don't respect them because I can feel that their hate is either bought or just vile or is the cool thing to do, and they flip-flopped. I don't like that. You know what I mean? This guy's never flip-flopped. He's only moderated a little bit. You know what I mean?
I think that I wouldn't dismiss them like that. I think there's different things to learn from each one of them. Mm-hmm. Different parts of the collective communal nationalist psyche of those turning against Israel that Tucker represents and that Candace represents. And it's worth taking a deep dive into both of them just to see that. But from what Nick Fuentes is saying, absolutely, that's clear. We know the story about the USS St. Louis off the coast of Florida, filled with Jews that got out of Germany right before the gate shut. And the Jewish leadership establishment went to Roosevelt and said, could you let them into America? Please. He said, no, we've reached our quota of German immigrants. This isn't just German immigrants. They're going to go to Auschwitz. Please could we mortgage the quote up to next year? He says, don't make this a Jewish war. And that threat of, I'm going to accuse you of dual loyalty, sent a shiver down the spine of those Jewish leaders, and they went home, and the 900 Jews went and died in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. That threat of dual loyalty has always been an underlying current of terror and fear that it will rear its head, and it's doing so right now.
Okay, but you went back to the position, in this argument that you just made, you went back to the position of, the goyim, the nations. The word, by the way, the word goyim is not a bad word.
Yes,
it's a very important thing to say. The word goyim means nations, and I don't mean anything pejorative using that term.
It depends how you say it.
Right, it depends.
Goyim,
right? It's the them. But the word Jewish people are also known as a goy, as a nation. The bottom line is the goyim in plural. You went back to the posture right now of, look, they don't want us, they don't always protect us. They don't want us to have dual loyalty. But I was asking you a tougher question, okay? I was asking you a more, a deeper question. I'll give you an example. If a Tel Aviv total, pro two-state solution Jew, a guy who, LGBTQ plus, he wants to bring everything to Israel. He wants Israel to be a total secular state. He wants the Arabs totally intertwined into Israel, and he has no interest in Sabbath or anything like that. If he says to me, forget it, I'm done with this country, I'm leaving, I'm not always going to say to him, no, please, please, please stay. I said, okay, you know what? If you're going to continue to facilitate these bad ideas, you're going to continue to hurt our children, then go. Then go somewhere else and assimilate out, because you're out of the res debtor of the state of Israel.
Well, that's where you and I are different.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, but I could say that. I'm saying
I can understand.
I'm not going to tell him. I'm not going to tell him go. But if he says to me, I'm going, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, I need to hold you back. Like, okay, listen, you're lost. I hope that Chabad finds you in Hungary or wherever you're going to go, and that you'll repent and all that kind of stuff. But I can't necessarily be like, oh, I desperately need you.
I just want to say why I wouldn't say that. Okay, because we have to understand that there's something transcendent that happens when the nation of Israel and the land of Israel, including those people that are so pathologically twisted to advocate for this morally destructive ideas in Israel, they have children, and their children's hearts are being shifted and are returning.
Certainly.
And so there's something that happens when the entire nation of Israel returns to the land of Israel that I don't want to start getting into, oh, I'd prefer you not to be here, or I'd prefer you to be here.
I wasn't going to push him out, but if he comes to me and says, I'm leaving, I'm out of here, I can't stand your theological Jewish state and your God and your Torah and your Sabbath and you know what I mean? I'm not going to fight, because I'm like, okay, you know what I mean? If you need to find somewhere else, because this is where we're going, that's what the path that we're on. Why did I say that? Because they're saying to you, I don't have a problem with you, Ari Abramowitz. I don't have a problem with red state type Jews. I have a problem with blue state Jews, which are controlling our country. Like, my point to you is, do you deny or do you accept that there's a negative Jewish influence, that somebody has a right to be like, I want this out of my country?
Of course. Of course, there's no question about it. The Jews have been on the forefront in advocating for transgendering kids. I even have family, I have cousins, I have friends in America that were so excited. Anything that is the intersectional proof that they are card-carrying members of the faith of left wokeism, right, leaders of it, of course I believe that.
Right.
There's no question.
Right. I'm just saying that may be that may be what has triggered them.
Okay, but one thing we're starting to learn, one thing Jews are starting to learn, is that we could say we're red state. And I remember growing up, and my father would look at Hannity, and there's little difference in his mind between Hannity, who wears ash on his head for Ash Sunday, and a Catholic who loves Israel and a conservative right wing, and a rabbi. We're all pretty much pro-Israel. But no, now we're starting to see that we're not right-wing conservative Republicans. We're not left-wing liberal Democrats. We're Jews.
Right.
We're Jews.
Right.
And we're seeing it coming from both sides.
Right.
And that's what's so fascinating here, because there's legitimacy from the left-wing side, legitimacy from the right-wing side. When you look at a very micro zoom in to such a degree where you don't see the greater picture,
right,
there's legitimacy.
You make a great point, and we are being clobbered. The Jews of America are being clobbered from left and right. That's for sure. And on social media globally, we're being clobbered from left, from right, and not to mention there's an element against us which nobody talks about, which is China. TikTok is the number one anti-Semitic spreading machine out there. China is behind it, so we are definitely between a rock and the hard place. That's for sure, and I agree with you.
Because also, and Fuentes is talking about APEC,
Right.
the millions of dollars of APEC. What about the billions of dollars put in by Qatar
Right.
and China
Right.
to universities, to TikTok, that is brainwashing the entire country?
If he would be,
not a word of that.
Exactly. If he would be talking about that just as much, and he'd be like, "Oh my God, Qatar is trying to get into our kishkas here, and it's messing us up." Like, you're right, that would be a lot fairer. Here, you're right that it reveals an anti-Semitism, not just a xenophobia, healthy xenophobia of wanting to be what I am, right? I agree with you about
Right, and also one of the great ironies is he's always saying Jews are unassimilable. Right, they don't assimilate.
Right.
They refuse to assimilate.
Right.
Which, to our ears, let's actually listen to this clip. One of the many clips he talks about Jews won't assimilate.
Let's do that.
I think that you cannot actually divorce Israel and the neocons and all of those things that you talk about from Jewishness, ethnicity, religion, identity. And let me give you like a perfect example. You say on your show that we need to treat Israel like any other country. And I sort of understand that in principle because Israel is another foreign country. Yeah. But Israel is unlike every other country in the sense that because the Jewish people are in a diaspora all over the world, there are significant numbers of Jews in Europe, but also in the United States, because of their unique heritage and story, which is that they're a stateless people. They're unassimilable. They resist assimilation for thousands of years. And I think that's a good thing. And now they have this territory in Israel. There's a deep religious affection for the state. It's bound up in their identity, the story of the Exodus from Egypt, the promise of the land, all these things. Let's say in the United States, for example, somebody like a Sheldon Adelson, he's not Israeli. Is he an ideological neocon? Does he believe in the promise of democratic globalism? I don't think necessarily. His heart is in Israel. And it's because he is a proud Jewish person. And I guess what I'm saying is that if you are a Jewish person in America, you're sort of, and again, it's not because they're born, but it's sort of a rational self-interest politically to say, I'm a minority. I'm a religious ethnic minority. This is not really my home. My ancestral home is in Israel.
I feel like to the untrained ear or the untrained eye that sees this, they're like, does he really hate us or not? Does he really?
If a rabbi said that, if let's say Rabbi Przansky would say this speech exactly, I could hear him saying in his tone, I would think that would be the most complimentary clip I've ever seen, or one of them.
But what he's saying when he
These
says we
people
have
have
to treat
survived-
them, we have to treat them with the exceptionalism that they deserve.
But
now, if you ask him what's that exceptionalism, we need to hate them more. We need to fear them more because there's an exceptional threat that they pose. That's why it's important to understand that, because to us, we hear that and we're like, we refuse to assimilate. Is there any other nation in the history of the world that throughout history has had a greater desire, unquenchable desire to do anything to assimilate, from the days of the Hellenists, where Jews were reversing their circumcisions in the painful process, to throughout Europe, where they were converting to Catholicism, to today in America, pre-Holocaust Germany, the intermarriage rate was 60-70%, right? There were Jews for the advancement of Hitler. There was an entire party of Jews that were advocating for Hitler. Jews have always wanted so badly to assimilate, and we haven't been able to. Now, why? So he sees our inability to as our lack of desire, but we haven't been able to because Hashem says that we are His eternal people, that we are His witnesses. His witnesses. And so for us to continue to exist, what God does, there's a famous rabbi said that if the Jews don't make Kiddush, the Gentiles will make Havdalah. If we don't sanctify ourselves and serve the purpose that we were given in the world to shine a light of godliness and to bless the world, then the Gentiles will make that ritual called Havdalah, where they will make a distinction and say, no, you think you can marry in, you think you could disappear? No. There is something spiritually transcendent about our inability to assimilate. And it's not from our lack of desire. It's because of our mission in the world that we're God's chosen people. And if we assimilate and disappear, then His promises and His covenants that we will be for all eternity will be null and void. And nothing that the God of Israel says returns null and void.
I'm not sure I agree or like the way that you presented the Jewish people throughout the ages. I think that Jewish people, there's always been a minority that have wanted to assimilate, but I think the Jewish people have actually held on and kept the Torah and kept the Sabbath and actually kept separate. The ghetto was a mechanism to stay separate from the Gentiles, from the non-Jews. And I think that we've done an amazing job, and I agree with you that it's godly. But I think the Jewish people have yearned to educate their children throughout the ages and to keep ourselves Jewish. And we have letters, for example, from the Yemenite Jews who are saying we're being forced converted into Islam. How do we keep our Judaism, on the pain of death, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that you're presenting the Jews a little too efforts to assimilate. I think the Jewish people have always wanted to stay. But when I hear his words, I think to myself, in a sense, they're very complimentary. You're right. What does he mean by treat them exceptionally? But he means this is a unique people. This is a people that there's no other people like this in the world. In a sense, what I like about Fuentes, and I say like in quote marks, is that he respects and fears the Jewish people, as I've said before. But he also seems to have almost a religious sense about the Jewish people. And this is, to me, the big difference between Fuentes and Nick, and what's his name? And Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. They despise Christian Zionism. They despise a sense that the Bible says that these people are unique, like you just said. They despise the idea that God has created Israel and that Israel is a godly creation. They despise that idea. I don't know if he does or doesn't. He seems to have a more fear of what's going on. He fears what Israel could become. But those other guys, they do not. And this is really the crux of it all. I think one of the most important clips that I've seen in the last many, many months, and there's been so many clips, of all the discussions was the one interview where Tucker Carlson's interviewing Ted Cruz. And he says to Ted Cruz, well, let's just watch it.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of it, says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my. You pull out the phone and use the.
It's in Genesis, but so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology. I'm confused. What does that even mean,
Tucker?
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
So is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the
God's referring to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right?
So as you could see, Ari, Tucker Carlson asks Ted Cruz, he says to him, is this Israel, the Israel of today, is that the Israel of the Bible? And I think that Ted Cruz bunted or kind of hit a single where he could have hit a grand slam, because it could have been a moment for so many people to see the truth that he has inside his heart and his father, etc., which is, and I don't need to be a Christian. I just need to be a Bible believer to know this. This Israel is that Israel. This is the third Commonwealth. This is the reborn Israel. This is it. This is what we've been waiting for, with all of its problems. And if you know the Bible, you see that the Israel of today is like the Israel of the past.
Right. Forget the fact that for thousands of years, you and I and our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents have been yearning and praying to return to Jerusalem. There's an unadulterated presence of Jews in the Holy Land for thousands of years. But I can understand 600 years ago, when there's pogroms and Cossacks and murder and inquisitions, they're like, yeah, God hates those people. He rejected them. They're no longer the chosen people of God. But now that all of the prophecies are coming to fruition through us, right? The ingathering of the exiles, the revival of the Hebrew language, the desert is blossoming and turning green. We're returning to Judea. For those people to continue to hold strong to this replacement theology, because that is really the core of what this is about.
Exactly.
That is the root. I want you to listen to this from Fuentes, because he is a replacement theologist. He is. I want you to listen to this.
Idea that, the Jews are the Old Testament or the New Testament. The relationship between the New Testament and the Old Testament, it's not a sequel. The New Testament and the theology in it replaces the theology of the Old Testament. So in the Old Testament, you have a religion that's based on the people of Israel. They make sacrifices at the temple. They have rabbis. They have the law. But when Jesus arrives, he changes everything, because he becomes the law. And so this is where a lot of the Protestants say, we need to support Israel because the Bible says those who bless Israel will be blessed. That's in the book of Genesis. And the book of Genesis is talking about what is Israel in the Old Testament and the first covenant that God makes with the Jewish people. When Jesus comes, just like everything else, Israel's transformed. The law's changed, the priesthood has changed, the temple has changed, and Israel changes. What was the family and the race becomes the body of Christ. He says there is neither Jew nor Gentile. The new Israel is
the reason I love this so much is because this is what it's about. This is the ones and the zeros of the coding. Beyond, so everything else is a facade. It's a veneer. It's the genocide and the this. Deeply, they believe that they are the new Israel, and hence, if they believe that God rejected Israel and the Jewish people, then the worse the torment and persecution and suffering and rejection, it bolsters their perception that they are the new Israel. It fortifies their replacement theology. But the greater the victories and the miracles and the prophecies being fulfilled, it negates.
You mean of modern Israel?
Right, of modern Israel. It negates that foundational replacement theology. Right. And that's why I think we need to, the real answer to this is to go into the Word of God, to go into the Torah. Right? In Genesis, it says, and I will establish my covenant between me and you and your descendants after you throughout their generations for an everlasting covenant. Right? In Leviticus, yet even so, when they're in the land of their enemies, I will not reject them or abhor them to destroy them utterly and break my covenant with them. For I am the Lord their God. The book of Jeremiah. Thus says the Lord, who gives the sun for light by day. If these laws depart from before me, then also the seed of Israel shall cease being for me, a nation for me forever. He is calling God a liar. That's what he's doing.
He's saying it's
Tucker
not just him.
and Candace, all of these replacement theologists are saying that these promises, these covenants of the God of Israel, God is a liar. A liar.
Well, they wouldn't agree to that language that you just said. They would say that it's been replaced. And they're saying that.
So they're saying God changes his mind.
Yes, they're saying God changes his mind.
That says, I do not change my mind.
Right. And also very unfairly, he said in that clip that, that's Genesis. It's clear to me, by the way, that he has not read the Bible, the 24 books of the Jewish Bible. He's not read them, the so-called Old Testament. But the bottom line is that you said this earlier, and it's true. Israel is a theological challenge to replacement theology. And there's two bifurcated ways that you could choose. You could either choose to love the Jews and figure out how inside of Christianity, you're going to see that the covenant has never been broken with Israel, and you're going to see that you want to be part of that. And there's another way, which is you're going to want to destroy, push back against, make small what is Israel. And that's what they're choosing. Like Christian Zionists chose the other way. They chose to find a way to make it work, to understand what Israel is. And I want to say to you that it's not only doctrinal. You are actually a product of Judea, of 2,000 years of Jewish tradition, but you're also a Texan. And I'm an honorary Texan because I married a Texan. And when I go down to Texas, Ari, I find that people are not so doctrinal. They just know that the Israel of today is Israel. They just know. They've read the Bible. Their mamas read them the Bible. They know that Israel is the hero of the story, right? When you're like a Bible illiterate and you've only read some of the so-called New Testament, the Christian texts, and you don't know the Bible really, then you don't understand who the hero is. You just don't understand. You only have one hero, and he's everything. He's everything. He's this cup of water, and he's this table, and he's the Ark of the Covenant. He's everything. I think it's kind of childish, frankly. But in any case, the people who have read the Bible, they just know. They just know. And they come to Jerusalem and they know. The greatest revelation of God in this world today is the building of Yerushalayim, the building of Jerusalem. And yes, the third temple in Jerusalem that's coming. These guys want to stop that. They want to block that. They don't want. They sense it's a challenge to them. By the way, in Islam, the same thing. They know that this thing is a challenge to all of the stuff that they said, that they're the new religion, that they've replaced all the other religions. It's a bummer. It's a bummer for them that there's this big, beautiful Jerusalem that's shining forth and becoming the spiritual capital of the world.
And by the way, it also explains, I always wondered how it could be that these cosmopolitan, leftist, atheist Europeans are marching through the streets in support of Hamas and Hezbollah, which are antithetical to them in every single value, in every single way. Where's that coming from? It's the strangest of bedfellows. How is that even possible? Well, when you go all the way back to the archetypal roots of where this is from, you start to understand that they're both ultimately replacement theologists. There's a famous midrash of Ishmael, who's the father of Islam in the Arab world. He goes to Esau, who's the father of Rome and Catholicism and the whole replacement theologist, the Inquisitions and the Holocaust and all of that. And so Ishmael says to Esau, listen, Esau, how about this for an idea of a partnership? You kill your brother, and I'm going to kill my brother, and together we're going to take over the world. What is he saying? Esau, you kill Jacob, I'm going to kill Isaac, and together we're going to take over the world because we were not given that chosen status that they have. And Esau says, I love it. Let's do it. And he gives him his daughter in marriage, and from that calls Amalek. But then you understand, but it says that in Esau's heart, he was saying, Ishmael, when we're done with this, I'm going to kill you.
Right.
And Ishmael was saying in his heart, when we're done with this, Esau, I'm going to kill you. There's no love there between the far left and the Islamic right. They just both have this replacement theology.
Right.
That's what it's about. So when we really focus on that and we help explain, but then it really comes down to, we're the chosen people. We are. Chosen for what? We never clarify that.
Right.
I think a lot of this hatred from both sides is coming to force us to clarify that question.
Yeah, I agree.
What are we chosen for?
Yeah, I agree with you that these people are messengers in a sense. One of the messages is come home to the land of Israel. That's an obvious one. Another one is what you're talking about right now, which is refine your message. Like, are you trying to be a light unto the nations? I would say Jerusalem is trying to be a capital of spirituality for the world. That pilgrimage to Jerusalem and connecting with the God of Israel is a message for all mankind. That's the opportunity. But we have not. I agree with you. We have far from clarified that.
I want to play one more Fuentes clip here.
All right.
Right. And this is where he's on Patrick Bet-David show. And he says, I'm an Italian, fourth generation Italian. You don't see me talking about Italy and Rome. I'm an American now. What's with these Jews that go back thousands? Here, listen to this clip.
The historic animosity between the Jewish people and the Europeans. They hate the Romans because the Romans destroyed the temple. That's why Eric Weinstein goes to the Arch of Titus and gives it the finger and takes a picture. We don't think like that as Americans and white people. We don't think about the Roman Empire in 2,000 years ago. They do.
The point that he's saying there is that a Chinese person that left China 5 generations ago in America, they're American. They're not thinking about the ancient glorious days of China. The same thing with the French or the Italians. He says there's something different in the epigenetic coding of the nation of Israel, of the Jewish people, that they are connected to their mission in a great, and Jews could be like, no, we're not. We try to assimilate, but there's nothing you can do to shake it. It's a part of who you are, even if you don't know it or understand it. And so he is forcing the nation of Israel to say, why are we connected in this way? What is our mission? Why do we come back to the land of Israel?
Well,
we're chosen for what? And what are we chosen for? We're chosen to be a light. We're chosen to shine a light to the world, to say all of you are the children of God.
To channel God.
To channel God. To bless the nation. We're supposed to.
But this one thing that you said, which is not exactly accurate, which is that he's speaking to the Jewish people. Truth is, he's only American Jews are hearing him, right? Israeli Jews, they don't. You can go to any Israeli, be like Nick Fuentes. They'll be like, what is that? A Mexican food? I never heard of that. What is that? You know what I mean? It doesn't mean anything. He's talking to American Jews right now. That's who's being made uncomfortable by his language. The Israelis barely even know that he
Okay, but
exists.
the Israelis have Hamas.
Right.
As our Nick
That's
Fuentes.
right. That's right.
The Hamas that are saying, we're attacking Israel now because, look, they're bringing in the red heifers. They want to build the temple. And a lot of Israelis are like, build the temple? I don't want to build the temple. But it doesn't matter what you want, Israeli in Tel Aviv.
Right.
The bottom line is that Nick Fuentes of Israel, Hamas, is coming to let you know that you have a mission, who you are, what you're about. And it's not by an accident that there is a spiritual revival happening in this country. Tell me what is more
there is
successful.
a big spiritual revival. There is October
and Hamas
7th.
is a greater success
Right.
at Kiruv.
Right.
At
Like
bringing
Haman, like Haman's ring, like Haman's
that's what
ring,
it says.
right.
It says Haman was successful, a better prophet than 70 prophets. The prophets of Israel came to the Jews, telling them to cease their evil ways, to return to God, and they weren't listening.
Right.
They listened to Haman.
Right.
Haman was successful
Right.
where they were not. And that's why God is sending the hunters.
Right, that's right.
That's why he's sending the Nick Fuenteses and the Candace Owens and the Tucker Carlsons and the Hamas and the Hezbollah and all throughout Europe and all throughout the world. It's manifesting in different characters with different voices and different flavors and different ways. But it's all happening right now to wake the nation of Israel up. That there's nothing. A lot of Jews are like, we have to fight the Fuenteses. We have to fight the Tucker Carlsons. We have to fight for the truth. No, at a certain point, I don't know if you remember when the Jews came after the spies and they had this terrible sin where they spoke against the land of Israel. And Moses said, none of you are going to enter. The next day they woke up and said, let's go fight and win. And Moses said, God is not with you. And there was a terrible loss. This is not a fight that we're going to win. We're not going to win this fight of we should stay in America because the rights and the principles that America was founded upon of equality. That's not going to win. The message here is that it's time to come home. I don't know. I know you may have a reflexive answer. No, we have to fight.
I wouldn't say no. I would say I have learned from Nick Fuentes three things. One, America's face has changed, and I love the chidush, the innovation that you gave me. That when the face of Laban changes, and then it's time to pack up and go. Like, there's no question that the face of America is changing. Although, by the way, I also wonder how much of that is actually filtering down to regular people. But the first issue that he's brought up is come home to the land. By the way, when I speak to people, I don't tell them make aliyah, come to the land of Israel. I say buy an apartment. Take a step.
I know that's what you've... First of all, I want to just clarify something with you right here on air in front of everybody,
Yeah.
okay? That is a new thing of Yishai Fleisher. I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, but I'm saying that when I first met you, you were saying Aliyah revolution, keep making Aliyah. There is a certain clarity and power to the message that shifted the entire course of my life and thousands of others.
Yeah.
Now you've moderated a little bit and you're saying, okay, I understand. You've met too many people and heard the complexities and the nuances of too many stories, of the difficulties of making Aliyah. And you're saying, okay, buy an apartment, drink Israel wine, one step at a time. And you know what? I heard that and I respected it. But now that the winds are shifting and changing, this is the time where you say, pack a bag.
Right.
Pack a bag and get a one-way ticket.
Right.
Because this is not about theology or the ingathering of the exiles. This is about pikuach nefesh, saving a life. Because right now, the foundations are being laid that if there's a black swan event, some event happens in the world that is catastrophic and the gates are shut, it will be like that before it is weaponized and it turns against the Jews in a way that is dizzying. And I hate the fact that I need to say it because I don't want to be an alarmist. And I think it's beneath the dignity of Israel for Jews to flee to the Holy Land.
Well, it's not beneath the dignity because that's what Israel's been for a long time, is in a way a refuge. I don't think it's beneath the dignity, but I get your point, which has come from love. And I get your point, by the way, and I don't disagree with you. There is definitely a sea change. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. There's an atmospheric change. Anti-Semitism is cool, like one of the clips that we played. Anti-Semitism is now cool. And that's
I'm just saying,
a big problem.
Israel attacked Iran. And that Tucker Carlson had to eat his hat and it didn't go as he thought. But let's say for a second it did. Because it could have. It could have been catastrophic World War III. What do you think would have happened in America? The voices from the right and the left, as the gates are shut, as there is the food shelves in the grocery stores are empty, as there are runs on the bank. Who do you think they're going to be pointing at with a visceral rage? They're going to be pointing from both sides at the Jews, these Jews who are comfortable in their own little bubbles there, and they're going to be pointing at them. And I feel my family in America, I feel my friends in America. I don't want to said, I don't want to say this. I don't want to be this guy that says this, but I know that if I don't say this, because it's so heavy on my heart, when I leave this world, I'm going to stand before the creator of heaven and the earth. He's going to say, I put this on your heart. Why didn't you say it? Because I don't want to offend American Jewry and diaspora Jewry.
And your point is well taken, and it's now live. People will be able to hear it, and I hear that. I'm gonna shift the gear for a second. You've issued a stark warning to American Jews. I want to make a warning to somebody else, and that's American Gentiles. The minute your country is taken over by anti-Semitism, the minute you start to be a country that's not blessing Israel but cursing Israel, you have begun the process of shrinking away from your empire. That has happened. I don't think that that's theological. That's biological. That's the way the world operates. Every empire that turned on the Jewish people shrank back to its smallness. If it's the Germans and it's the Austrians, if it's the Dutch and the Spanish, and it's certainly a much more recent history, if it's the British, who had a giant empire, gigantic, ginormous empire. But when they turned on the Jews, within just a few years, they became the little island that they are today. Okay?
I've always wanted to do a PhD thesis tracking throughout history the meccas of Jewish diaspora and then the precipitous downfall immediately following them turning against
the Jews are a channel for blessing in your nation. Okay? If Fuentes is coming out saying, get the blank out of here, I hear it. And we have a place, Baruch Hashem, thank God, we have our homeland back. Hashem has made great miracles. But for you, Fuentes, do you really think that what you're offering is a great offer for America? Do you think that when you cleanse America from Jews, America is going to be a blessed country? Biologically, historically speaking, it will not. It will shrink. And I see it. The American shrinkage has begun. And so that's for you, America. Like you're throwing out, you're vomiting out, you're listening to this guy, you're vomiting out your Jews. It's been done before in all those places. Look at these great cities. Yemen used to be a great, a cultural mecca for Jews. It became what it is today, a crappy little country. And look at Lithuania and all these places. They were once important because the Jews were there. And they brought God's channel. They channeled godliness into this world. They brought smartness and innovation and political innovation and cultural innovation. You kick them out and you go to Vienna today. I've been to Vienna. Very, very nice city. A shadow, a memory of great times past. Okay? A nice place. They keep it nicely, but it doesn't have the power. The Jews bring the power. You want to kick the Jews out of New York? You got Mamdani. He's going to kick the Jews out of New York. He's going to arrest the Netanyahu. He's going to globalize the jihad. Gesund to hate, as we say. Good luck. Let's see what happens to your great New York City without us. And I think that there's another aspect of that, which is who will stand with Israel? The nations are to be judged. We know, and Fuentes says truthfully, we will survive. When we're kicked out of America and America, the whole thing is done. The whole American Jewish project is done. We're going to be fine. Within a span of a few hundred years, we went from the Babylonian to the Persian to the Greek and the Roman Empire. We're still here. As Rabbi Berelwein says, that if the people in the past would see who is selling tickets to whose ruins, they would be very surprised. Okay, we're selling tickets to the other people's old ruins. Come and see Case Caesarea and what Rome did in Israel. It's the past. We're still here, so you can fight us. You can curse us. You can put us in ghettos. You can do mass murder. And so what? We're still going to defeat you in the long run at the end, not because of our strength and not because of our amazing smartness. It's because we're channeling what God wants in this world. And there are many people in Texas and around the world that want to connect to the living Israel, to the rebirth of Jerusalem. They believe that the God of Israel is doing great things, and they want part of it.
More than ever. More than ever. And when I say more than ever, I'm not talking about quantitatively more than ever. It's less than it's ever been, but qualitatively more than ever. That my message to Gentiles, to Christians, to non-Jews throughout America would be, don't let the overwhelming demographics and statistics of those turning against Israel make you lose hope.
Right.
Let it bolster and strengthen your hope.
Absolutely.
Because listen, I live on one of the deepest settlements in the Judean frontier, and for some reason, it's drawing like a magnet these righteous Christians that come out with a greater light and a greater zeal than I've ever seen before.
That's right.
To stand with Israel. And what I look at them, I'm like, who are you? You're Abrahamic. You're an Abraham.
That's right.
Why? Because Abraham was an Ivri. He was a Hebrew. He stood on one side and the rest of the world stood on the other.
Yeah.
And for those people that say, yes, but the vast majority of blah, 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 and that is some inherent proof of anything that the majority of people believe one thing, Abraham said, I don't care. The whole world can worship stones and rocks. I know that there's a one God.
That's right.
And so these Christians, these righteous of the nations, are loving Israel with a greater passion.
Let's just call them Bible lovers who see Israel.
Bible lovers, that's right. I don't even know what to call them, and they don't even know what to call themselves.
And I had a Dutch group yesterday. They were exactly what you're talking about. And right after them, a Pentecostal group. They were just like that. They're like, oh my God, just let me hold on to you. Let me hold on to those tzitzit, those four-corner garments, and then take me to Jerusalem. Show me the God of Israel.
They don't know what to call themselves at times because the labels are really falling apart. But it was of them that Zechariah, that the prophet Zechariah said, "V'nilvu goyim rabim al Hashem b'yamahu v'hayu li la'am." And the righteous of the nations will attach themselves to the house of Israel on that day and be for me like a nation. What does it mean to attach yourself to the house of Israel? One of those few Germans that hit a Jew in their home in World War II, if they were caught, what happened to them? They were in the gas chambers of Auschwitz. When you tie your fate into the fate of Israel, when you cast your lot with the Jewish people in a real way, then you are attaching yourself to the house of Israel. And then I believe in Hashem's eyes, there's a new type of national thing that's being formed there because they're not just saying it, they're living it.
I love what you're saying. I love this image of a new nation being formed. I call it Abrahamic, but whatever it is around God. Listen.
But let me just bring it together here. The righteous of the nations, they are shining qualitatively brighter than I've ever seen before. The numbers are smaller, but those that are doing it for real are shining brighter. So don't get lost in whether it's realistic, whether you have a chance. Don't feel down when you look at America and the general direction that it may be going in. And that's not your department. Your department is to do everything you can to shine the truth of Israel and the God of Israel and the nation of Israel to the world.
Absolutely.
Beyond that, it's out of your hands. The outcomes of our actions are out of our hands. All that we can focus on is, are we giving all of ourselves to doing it?
And to God. Are we giving ourselves to God and what He really wants in this world? I love what you're saying, and I love that towards the end here, we're ending it on a really positive note. And I totally agree, and I've seen it with my own eyes, what you're describing, this fire that's coming from people that want to stand with Israel. Let's finish off this amazing conversation with Nick Fuentes, who's been the star of the show, who's been this kind of, and I say this with tongue in cheek, but there's some truth in it, a kind of prophet. Let's watch him talk about where Israel is really going and what the third temple, the power of the third temple that he fears so much. Let's watch him say the words himself of what he understands, where this whole process of the world is really going.
John's eschatological views about the 12th Imam and the Mahdi and all this. We don't talk about the Jews, which is, in order for them to practice their religion, they need to reestablish temple worship. In order to have temple worship, they need another temple. And this is not exactly a fringe idea in Israel. They talk about sacrificing these red heifers, these perfect red heifers. And then ultimately, one of the goals of the religious Zionists is to take out the mosque, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and rebuild the third temple. And this is sort of terrifying because it undoes what the caller said, does what Christ did, which was to destroy the temple because there's a new sacrifice, which is him, the Lamb of God. There's a new temple. There's a new church, new priests. There's a new law. And then they were sent out. Now that they've returned, it's almost like it's working in reverse. They've returned to the land. And then, it might point towards maybe they're going to rebuild the temple. And who will inhabit the temple? The Jews say that our religion is dead because Christ is dead, they say. They say their religion is alive and their Messiah is yet to come. Who will inhabit the third temple and sit in the Holy of Holies on the site? It sounds like the Antichrist.
It's beautiful. And the reason it's so beautiful is because if Nick Fuentes himself,
Nick,
if he understood the blessing that would come to him, Nick Fuentes, if Hamas understood the blessing that would come to them, they would all be helping us build this temple. They're talking about Jewish nationalism, not understanding what Jews themselves don't understand. That when we return to the land of Israel and we establish the nation of Israel and the land of Israel, listen, in Israel we had 12 tribes. We didn't try to mix them all together and melt them into a melting pot. Each one had its own talent, its own gift to all of humanity that they bring. The redemption that we're praying for is that Mashiach, Messiah, the temple that we're building, is going to shine a light that each nation will see the beautiful godly gift that they've been given, that they can use to contribute to the welfare of all of mankind.
Yeah.
That the Jewish nationalism isn't particularism, but it's a blessing for the entire world.
That's right.
And that's why all of this is happening. It is bringing us to our own consciousness and awareness. The Nick Fuentes of the Hamas, they're all defibrillators. Waking up the Jewish people to who we are.
Yes, he is, but he is not blessing the United States. He is somebody who's bringing a shrinkage to the United States in the end. All of his racial purity in the end will not bring you a success. Listen,
he's blessing the United States in the way that Haman was a blessing for Persia. Okay, that really, ultimately, he is blessing the United States, because although on a micro level, it will be a curse for the United States, on a macro level, by pushing the Jewish people to our own awareness and awakening and identity of coming back to our land, that blessing will bless the United States and the entire world.
I guess
so. He's an uncooperative blesser.
Right.
He's not intending on it.
But what you're saying is that Hitler, in a sense, is an actor in that huge human drama, and he did not bring a blessing on.
We've spoken about this before. This was an epiphany that I had, that when you look from the Exodus from Egypt, from Amalek, every time the nation of Israel was right on the verge of shining a light, these forces of hatred and darkness of the Jews attack Israel, and without even meaning to,
the forces of hatred and darkness
against the Jews, attack Israel, seeking to stifle this redemptive light, not realizing that they're catalyzing it.
Right.
And that's what's happening right now. All throughout history it's happening, and right now, the final catalyst, I believe, that we're witnessing the final global catalyst. Why is all this happening around the world? Because the light of redemption is shining, and it's starting to create a frenzy of fear and craziness among the nations, among the globalists that want to have their power and control and not yield that to the greater God that has brought life and light to all of humanity. That's what we're here to do, and that's where all of this is going.
And all this hate is coming as Jerusalem is growing. It's being built. The most beautiful sight in the world is cranes in Jerusalem. And one day there'll be cranes on the Temple Mount building that third temple. That's definitely coming soon. Nick Fuentes is afraid of it, but he sees it. He sees it all too real in his mind. He also sees something that I believe in, which is the redemptive period means that Israel is strong economically, militarily, and spiritually. And he, in his sharp mind, sees that. He sees the day where Israel's wealthy, Israel's militarily strong regionally, and the wealth of the Arab countries comes in to help build Jerusalem and Israel. He sees it. He sees it. He doesn't love it, and that's because he has not humbled himself before the will of God. Ari Abramowitz, a great pleasure to be with you, talking about these really global historical issues that are rearing themselves right now so dramatically, and it was you catalyzing this meeting to talk about these issues that really impact our Jewish brothers and sisters, the future of Israel, the future of the nations, the future of America, and let us hope that we get through these tough times, these tumultuous times, and see the great blessings that God has promised to the forefathers and mothers, and that is coming to fruition in our time. May we be zoche. May we have the merit to help that come to fruition and be witnesses to what God is doing. Ari Abramowitz, thank you so much.
Amen. Thank you, Yishai. It's a great honor.